You guys ready to roll? Eric, you good?
You go with it.
Let's go.
Kevin, you ready?
I am.
All right, here we go. What's up, plus ones? My name is Rich from 56 Plus One.
And I'm Eric from 56 Plus One.
Welcome to today's episode of This is America. Episode 3, we have a career firefighter from East Hartford, you said,
Hartford,
right?
Yeah.
Author, American patriot, Kevin Brown is in the house. Welcome to the studio, Kevin.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're looking forward to talking to you. I know we've been talking for about a week and a half, 2 weeks,
Yeah.
setting this up, but we've talked, a couple months ago when
Yep.
we were introduced by a mutual friend,
Yeah, the Greek freak.
the Greek freak, Nickel Everest.
I had a friend once.
You did? It was like a very long time ago. So, Kevin, we're glad you took some time out of your week to come up and sit with us.
I was excited to do so.
I know you have a pretty interesting story, so let's get into it. Where are you from? What led you into firefighting? Let's talk about your early life and some of your early career, if you don't mind.
So I'm from Colchester. I kind of grew up there. Been living in the same town since I was made there. I started in firefighting when I was a young kid. My whole family was in firefighting in the Colchester Fire Department. So I was probably like 12 or so years old when I first was hanging out there all the time. And then when I was 14, I joined their junior fire department, and then stayed for 15 years from that point with Colchester. And then I had an opportunity to move to East Hartford Fire Department, and I became a career firefighter for them. And I worked 26 years there.
26 years in East Hartford.
Yeah.
Wow. So when you get into firefighting, like I work across, actually from the firefighting academy up at
Okay.
Bradley Airport.
Yeah,
So do all firefighters have to go through the academy, or do you said you started out young, you were a volunteer. How does that work?
So East Hartford sends their firefighters to the academy in Windsor Locks. I went there. I think our program was 10 weeks long at the time. Now I think it's up to 18 or a little longer
Really?
for the recruits there. Yeah, they've made it a much longer program. Some fire departments still run their own recruit programs to get the guys ready in-house or in a local aspect of other departments. But yeah, pretty much all of them go through some form of academy when you make that transition into a career department.
Okay, cool. What are some of the things that you really enjoyed about the firefighting life? You know, you said you spent a career there. You retired from the firefighting career. What are some of the things that stand out about it?
Well, I mean, one of the things that, you hear people talk about all the time is a brotherhood. And you have to know that the people next to you have your back all the time. You might not always like them, but you know that when that tone goes out and you go to that call, they're all doing the same job you are, and they're watching your back and you're watching theirs. So it does build that brotherhood and sisterhood, if that's what you want to call it. I mean,
Yeah.
I worked with a lot of good women too, but that's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about the career as a firefighter. But generally, you're serving the public. Not all of them are 100%, show 100% gratitude when you're done, depending on what the call was. But you go out there and you do your job. I mean, you do what they are calling you to do. I mean, you're helping people in their worst moments, and it's gratifying when you're all done. So
So, how often? Like, what's a night at the firehouse? I guess would be my question.
So these days, like East Hartford, they run medical calls as well as fires. They're not just a fire department. And probably between 70 to 80% of their call volume is actually medical calls. So a day at the firehouse is probably you're going to do, on a good day, maybe half a dozen medical calls.
Really?
On a bad day, you could do 30.
Wow.
And that's each individual house. That's not the whole entire department, So East Hartford has 5 different firehouses.
Okay, so your one particular house you
Yeah.
could do up to 30 calls a night.
It's not the average, but it
Right.
definitely has. It can happen. There are nights then you just you look at your pillow from the other room. You're never going to get to it.
Yeah.
Same thing with your supper. You sit down to have supper, and the next thing you know, you're coming back for a cold dinner because it's just you don't plan when the calls come in. They just come in and you go.
So, and when you go, is the whole fire truck started up? And
Oh yeah, yeah.
so I gotta something about that just kind of seems like there's a more efficient way. Number one, that truck itself is a big piece of equipment.
Well, it is, but the thing about it is like my firehouse, I was a lieutenant in before I retired. There's 3 people in the firehouse. We had one fire truck. There's my driver, I had a medic, and then there was me. And so when the call comes in, we are going to a medical call,
Right.
But on the way back, you could be going to a fire call.
Oh, there you go.
So one piece of apparatus serves that area as best as it can.
Right.
It wouldn't make sense to have a small vehicle just for medical calls when on the way back you could be going to a fire call.
Right.
You don't want to drive all the way back to the station and switch trucks.
Right.
Logistically, it's the best you can do in the scenario there, the environment that you have to operate in.
And why did that transition into a responsibility for the fire department?
I think some of it had to do with the original concept of customer service and the fire service. We were there already. A lot of it had been done either by ambulance services or police in some towns. But the fire department already had the staff, and it was a way for a couple things. One is to bring in the financial backing to increase your size so you have a better fire department, but at the same time to be able to service your communities in a closer environment. A lot of times the communities have one single ambulance service or whatever located in town, but the firehouses are spread throughout the town.
Gotcha.
So, it didn't make a lot of sense to have an ambulance running by the firehouse from 5 minutes away when the fire truck was only 2 minutes away.
Right.
East Hartford was actually one of the first communities in Connecticut that initiated paramedic service on the fire apparatus.
So forgive me for not knowing this, but are all firefighters trained EMTs nowadays, or is that kind of a specialty?
I would say that about 90% of most departments require a firefighter to be either an EMT or the lower level, which is, I don't remember. It used to be called MRT. I forget what they call it now. But most of them are at least an EMT.
Okay.
But a lot of departments are now transitioning to the paramedic level service so they can provide even more care, more ALS care on scene than an EMT would provide.
Wow.
So,
I think the other aspect of that has to do with community cost as well. Over ambulatory care, the hospital is in control of those costs too, right?
Right. There's a lot of things that go into it. There's new things called paramedicine that they're looking into, which would allow paramedics from the community to go out to your repeat callers and service them rather than wait for them to call 911. So to cut down on some of the 911 abuse and the ER abuse that goes on.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like a preventative type
Yeah, almost. And
call.
I don't know that there's any communities in Connecticut that have actually adopted that and are running with it yet, but I know when I was leaving, it was one of the hot topics that they were talking about to cut down on those frequent volumes. Frequent volume of calls of the repeat callers.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so I guess you kind of established they're essentially the people in your community are your customers, correct?
That's kind of the way they like to think about it now, and that you have an obligation to provide the best customer service to your clientele that you can, which falls back on training, it falls back on preparedness, and all the things that go into providing that service for.
And you get to know these people as well, so you know who's going to call and typically the schedule.
There are the repeat customers that you do develop a rapport with, and
right.
and I'm not saying that they're not needy or that they don't have actual issues, but there are a lot of people. The district that I was in was an older part of the community. And so there were a lot of calls. We would get a lot of calls, and they were definitely needed calls. They would call a lot, but they always needed you when they called. It wasn't like
Gotcha.
They needed a Band-Aid or an aspirin or something.
They had true medical issues, and
Yes.
they required regular care.
Yes.
That's basically what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
So let's say something like Life Alert. You talk about elderly.
Yep.
Life Alert gets a button. I don't know if that goes to a Life Alert agency or does that go to the EMT services?
I think most of them go to an answering service that's associated with their service they provide, who would then call the 911, dispatch center that's associated with them. So.
Got it.
Before we get too far, I did want to give you something. I noticed you're drinking a fine stout beer there. My wife has gained this particular art of crafting these fine mugs. So we have a 56 plus 1 mug with your name on it, Kevin. You are a plus 1, and I want you to have a mug to show it. So that's awesome. For you, my friend. Thank you very much. That's from
that is so cool.
Us at 56 plus 1.
And it will get used.
It's a heavy mug. You're a big guy, so like I can only drink 1 or 2 beers out of this thing because my bicep starts getting sore. But I think you'll be able to handle it.
The mug alone could do that. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
You got a new workout routine.
You start putting a gallon of beer in there, and that's a different story. That's great stuff.
That is very nice.
Awesome. So I know you said you started as a volunteer at a young age, and we talked previously off camera, but you said you come from a long line of firefighters. Your family.
So my grandfather was the chief of Colchester for like 30 years. My father had been a deputy chief there. All my brothers had been officers in the department, and I'm kind of like the second generation of kids in my family.
Okay.
So my brothers are all 10 years and older plus than me, so they kind of like paved the way for me and set a standard that I had to kind of live up to when I was there. So, yeah.
Well, I'm the oldest in my family as well. Not as well, but I noticed my younger brothers had a much easier time than I did. So you're lucky that you were the second generation. I think your childhood was probably pretty easy.
That goes in two different directions because, people expect more of you, when somebody else already set a high standard before you. So I had a lot to live up to when I got in there. So
that makes sense too. I guess I don't have experience in that aspect of it, but my brothers say the same thing about me, just the opposite way. They say, you got to do everything you wanted. You were the oldest, and they're not lying when they say that I'm the favorite of the family. But
I don't think I qualify as that.
No, I don't either.
I have two sisters, so.
Oh yeah, there's no competition there. Yeah, that's awesome. So so your family set the precedence for you, and did you feel like you had to get into firefighting, or what? You graduated school, and
so I've always been a little bit authority adverse.
Okay.
And so my mom wasn't crazy about the idea of me getting in the fire service as the second generation kid and a youngster.
Really? Okay.
But I just wanted to. I mean, I was like, I got to do this. I want to do it. It looks fun. So my dad would bring me down to the firehouse a lot, and I'd get to hang out in the firehouse. And back then they had like beer in the firehouse.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was like the little gopher.
Go get me a beer.
The guys would all be sitting in the chairs in the back of the firehouse, and they'd be like, "Kid, come here, go get me a beer." So I'd have to run over to the machine and put their money in, bring them back the beer, and hopefully I picked the right one. And but things like that obviously transitioned out over the years. But I still have fond memories of a lot of the older guys that existed at the time.
So do you think part of what you saw when you were young is you talked about a brotherhood, the camaraderie?
Yeah, and it's existed as far back as I can. Look into the fire service, both in the volunteer and paid side. So it's a necessary and maybe even unintended aspect of the job. Like I said, any given moment you could go into a fire and be in a dangerous situation, and we don't all have eyes in the back of our head.
Right.
But that's what the guy who's there with you, your partner, is there for. And it could be the guy you rode on the truck with, or it could be a guy from the other side of town, or a guy from another department. But that they all have the same goal in mind, and that's going in, extinguishing the fire, and coming out safe. And that means all of us, not just some of us.
Yeah, and you would do the same for anybody in front of you.
That's built into you as part of becoming a firefighter, is that your obligation exists beyond just for yourself. You have an obligation that exists to those around you. So, and like I said, it doesn't, you don't agree with everybody that you work with. It's never going to happen. There's going to be people you're like, man, if I could take him in the back alley, but that tone goes out. And that man is your brother. That man it don't matter what you thought about him or think about him for that period of that call. He's as close as anyone you'll ever have.
Now we have a job to do. This is strictly business. We're trained.
And I can't think of a single person that I've ever worked with, regardless of how we felt about each other, that didn't have that mindset when the tone went out. So.
That's a good feeling.
It is, yeah.
And I can probably speak for you as well, Eric, but that's one of the things I really miss about the military is the camaraderie and the brother sisterhood. I don't think you can find it in many other places.
No, and I don't. It's something that you can't really explain to people unless they've experienced something of it for themselves. We talk about. I have a lot of friends that are in the military, and I think a lot of them are of the initial opinion that only military will understand military. And I've been trying to share with them that no, other people, not everybody, but there are other people that have similar experiences, not the same, but there's enough similarity that we understand, have empathy for what you've been through and can understand it, and we can talk about it. My bad stories aren't any worse or better than yours. They're each personal, and that's the part that we can share sometimes, is that it's the personal, those scars that our stories leave, that's the hurt that a lot of people bring with them. And sharing some of that is, it's important to me. I like to let people know that I'm an ear. I tell people all the time, I said, I'm a big guy. I got, broad shoulders, and, you can say anything you want to me. So thick skin and broad shoulders.
You carry some of that weight.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I know before we actually started recording, you mentioned that about the firefighting, and you said one of the first questions you get is, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? And
that is a very common question. And I know it's not just firefighting. I know police, everybody who's in emergency services or military gets that same question at some point or another. And the one thing that the general public doesn't usually think about is that they're not asking you for a good story. They're asking you to repeat one of the worst things you've ever experienced, to relive it. And I don't think that they're ill-intended when they ask the question.
Right.
They're just trying to, spark conversation to them that would be interesting. But I mean,
there goes. I got to scratch question 3 off my list now.
No,
I'm just kidding. But no, that response that you gave me was something that I never thought about. And that's a good point. What's the worst thing you ever seen? And they're asking you to dig deep into something that you may not want to relive.
A pile of muck you hopefully put something over the top of for a little while.
So with that being said, what's one of the best things or probably one of the most rewarding stories, or one of the best things you've seen as a firefighter?
There's a lot of good aspects. I mean, there's just the look on a lot of people's faces when you help them with their emergency. Whether it was a minor one or a major one. I mean,
to them it was major.
Yeah, when you go to leave and they're like, "Thank you so much," whatever. I mean, I can't tell you how many children I've seen birthed. And luckily, thank God, because it's a messy job, I never had to physically do it. I've always had somebody else say that I could point in that direction. But I mean, what a great thing! You're bringing a new life into the world. I mean,
that's a whole different aspect.
You can't really put too much higher of a result of a call than to say, hey, we just brought a new life into the world, and it's a healthy, happy little child.
Is that something you thought you'd be doing when you became a firefighter? That you'd be helping to deliver babies? I mean, I know you want to name somebody's baby, but
I was just gonna say that from now on, it ought to be a law that if the fire department
delivers your child,
they get to name you.
You guys get to name the baby.
I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't curse any. There's some pretty sick firefighters out there that just take advantage of that opportunity.
Oh my God, that's funny.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good things that come out of it too. So it's not just bad things.
Yeah, that's cool. I never really thought of that aspect of it either. You see what you see on TV, and you get this stereotype and kind of what the firefighter is, but until you're in that situation and you actually live it, it's probably a lot more different than people realize.
It is. It's a different lifestyle. I mean, you got to remember that it's not just about the calls you go to. You're sacrificing a portion of your life. I mean, every 4 days I was at the firehouse. So 25% of my life while I was serving was at the firehouse with these guys. And that's 25% of the time I'm completely away from my wife and my children and everything that's going on in their lives. So it doesn't matter. Holidays come up, you work.
What was a shift?
So when I first started, we were running a day shift and a night shift. So you'd come in for 3 day shifts, and then you'd have 3 days off, and then you'd come back for 3 night shifts. And then, I don't know, maybe 10 years in, they decided to switch to a 24-hour shift. So we would go in at 7 in the morning, and we would stay until the next morning at 7 a.m.
Oh, wow.
And so that was our whole shift was 24 hours there. And, I mean, most times we got some opportunity to sleep or get some rest. But there are plenty of days when that didn't happen at all, And the funny part about it is there's days that, the whole day nothing happened. We'd go train, do our things, no calls at all. Sit down for dinner and the whole night erupted, and then you're up all night long. So there's really no planning for how your day is going to turn out.
Right.
I mean, you go in with an idea of how the day is going to go, but it very rarely would be that day, so.
Was there any, assimilation? Let's say that a drought had happened and there hadn't been rain in X amount of days, and you just kind of knew there would be a heightened level of calls being made for fire specifically, or
so I'll give
winter time?
Yeah, winter was
summertime?
more common. So I was working during the blizzard we had back in, I think 2011, somewhere around there. We got the 30-something inches.
Oh, yeah.
And so we had, not only did we have to deal with all the snow that was everywhere, so when the storm was happening, it was very difficult to get around.
Right.
And I mean, there were wires down, and there was just stuff going on everywhere. We had over 100 and something calls that came in a couple hours. And the aftermath was actually more the worst part, because so many people were without power. We had people running generators in their homes.
Oh, man.
We had people heating their homes with charcoal grills.
Right.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
we had, in our community, I think we had possibly 5 deaths related to CO because people were just trying to survive. They just didn't know any better.
Oh, that's a shame.
And we went out all over the place trying to get to these people. And, it was, I mean, that's probably the most, as far of a natural disaster that I had to deal with when we were there, is that, these things happen and you got to deal with them. So
Charcoal grills in the house.
people don't know. Not everybody knows.
Yeah.
To be very coarse, there's a lot of dumb people in the world, and they just do dumb things because they don't know any better.
Yeah, I would at least run a gas grill. That's a joke. That's a joke.
I would back my car out and just run the exhaust through. It's warm.
There were people doing that too. There were
Right,
people,
no, I know.
mean, they were using people were running their ovens with the door wide open, trying to heat their homes.
Right.
But a generator in the house too.
Well, they put it in the basement. Thinking, it's in the basement. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Right next to the electrical panel. Plug it in. You're good to go.
They
Right?
get all the windows closed, doors closed, because obviously it's
cold
cold.
outside.
And,
It was
that's why
very
they're
cold
doing
there
it.
at that time. So, and we had community centers open and things like that to try and get, but nobody wants to leave their home unless they absolutely have
Right.
to.
And
So
I would assume in situations like that, you as firefighters are kind of prepared for a shift where you're going to see a lot of activity like that.
well, I mean, yeah, when you know that there's a big storm. So I mean, when there's advance warning, a lot of times they'd try and put extra people on.
Okay.
So we could staff, the smaller 4-wheel drive vehicles that could get around town that aren't normally staffed, our ancillary vehicles and stuff. We'd put extra paramedics in those so they could get out to calls and try and help
Okay.
people out. But, those are just the logistical things that the guys with all the gold on their uniforms,
Right.
the decisions they make. So
They set it up.
they tell us what we're going to do and we make it happen.
So did I misunderstand you? Did you say at your firehouse a typical shift was 3 people, or is that?
Yeah, 3 in our house. Yeah.
Okay, so
So in East Hartford, most of the trucks run with 3 firefighters. When I was leaving there trying to get a few more on, the ideal goal would be to run with at least 4 firefighters in each apparatus,
okay,
especially with the way we run our medics. So the ambulance service of Manchester provides the EMS transport
yep,
for the town of East Hartford. But if our paramedic initiates care, they go with the ambulance to the hospital.
oh, so you're down.
Yeah, so a lot of times they're running trucks with 2 guys on them, so
So now you get a call on the way back. Now your
yeah,
EMT's on the ambulance. So
Yep.
now you're down.
yeah.
So I got something here. This is all right. One of my family members, he was a firefighter, volunteer,
Mhm.
but he was also lighting fires
Oh,
in the state.
Kevin, you never heard of that, did you?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to make some work.
So I mean, did you experience any guys like that? It's almost like they wanted to be.
So when I was a volunteer, there was a guy in my firehouse that was accused of that. I don't know whatever come of it. And then there was a couple younger kids that had been accused of it too. I think they were actually found guilty for having done it. But yeah, it's not actually an uncommon thing. It's more, I think, not to disparage anyone, but I think it's a little more common with volunteer departments.
Right.
Because volunteer departments are so hard up to get people to come in. They don't put somebody through an academy for 10 weeks where you get to learn a little bit more about them. They give them classes and stuff like that, but they're already there and available, and they already have that opportunity. And most of it's an adrenaline thing for them. They want that rush of running to a fire, potentially being the savior.
And that's what I think this was as well.
And so, I mean, that's usually the drive behind a lot of it. I mean, there are some people that are just overly fascinated by fire, but
My brother.
Yeah.
My brother's almost set it. I think he almost set the state of Maine on fire one time.
well, I mean,
My brother.
there's still
almost
firefighters
said
that do stupid stuff. When
He's watching, by the way.
I know. Well, the other brother.
when I was a firefighter,
the other brother.
when I was a volunteer, We had a guy. We had been clearing land for a fire department park, and he was down there by himself one day, and for whatever reason, he chose to douse the pile with gasoline.
Oh man!
And he thought, I'm standing far enough away, so he went to touch a flare. And unfortunately, the fumes were coming right at him. So when he tossed the flare, he lit himself right up. I mean, it wasn't like life-threatening, but it was altering in the fact that he no longer had eyebrows and a lot of his hair was missing.
I gotta admit, I did that stupid thing. My wife watched the whole thing happen from the doing dishes, and it was one of these stupid moments, right? I got a 55-gallon drum, leaves and trash, and I threw some gasoline in there. It doesn't light. Threw some more gasoline. It doesn't light. I'm like, what the? Is this even real gasoline?
Just walk away for a couple minutes. Come back. It'll go.
Yeah, that's called the air-fuel mixture.
Right. And so I lit that thing up. I'm actually now, because it's not lighting, I'm doing what you're talking about, expecting the gas to go, right? And finally I stick down in there. The whole thing, it shot up like a fireball up in the sky. My wife ran out screaming. I lost my eyebrows.
Yeah.
You're lucky.
Yeah. It was just, like I said, one of those stupid moments. But, yeah, so, yeah, I guess I could see that.
Lesson learned.
Yeah.
You can go on YouTube and see the videos. I mean,
Right.
pouring the gas can, and then they're doing the windmill, and then there's fire everywhere. And
the worst part about it is that
I think I was hanging around with your brother that day.
you see all these videos online now, and population is divided into how they view them. There's the people that view it as entertainment.
That'd be me.
And then there's the people that view it as a goal. How can I top that person?
Oh, right.
And it's, oh man, just don't play with gasoline. It's
it's not. Thing. But there is some cool videos. I saw the guy light a golf ball on fire, and he chipped it into the wood pile.
But he probably didn't. The golf ball probably wasn't gasoline. Usually when they do that, they put Vaseline on it.
Yeah, no, the golf ball wasn't. But
right.
when it hit the pile, it did a pretty good little explosion.
Yeah.
But some people learn the hard way. Not me. I'd rather watch it on video.
Learn from other people's mistakes.
So speaking of that, I mean, obviously, CO2 poisoning is not good. But is there something that you saw that you thought was really dumb? Like, have you ever answered a call where you're like, man, how did that happen? Or why would they do that?
I would say
this guy was trying to light leaves on fire with a 55-gallon drum.
I would say that probably 60% of the calls we think that about when we go there. Maybe not quite that high. But there's a lot of calls that you're just like, really?
How?
And it could be any range of calls, from people that call for medical things like, I have a toothache, or I have a stub toe, or, things like that. Yeah. To people that,
I have a toothache?
Oh, yeah. I mean, people call for anything they think that somebody's going to bring them relief,
I got 2 cords of wood that need to be stacked.
Trust me. So I'll give you an example. When I was first started, we got a call one day, and God's honest truth. We got a call for a squirrel stuck in the tree. And we're all looking at it like, what? This has got to be a joke. And they're like, no. So
was this April 1st, by the way?
No. If it was, nobody would have responded.
Oh, my God.
But our captain called the dispatcher, and he's like, what the hell is that? And she goes, no, the guy raised a squirrel. It's a squirrel's a rescue. It's a red squirrel. And he brought it to the park, and it got loose, and it's in the tree. But, it won't survive. Somebody's got to go get it down on the tree for him. And he's like, are you kidding me? So there are things that you'll hear sometimes for calls that just make absolutely no sense. And that's the first one that just came to mind. But honest to God, that was a real call that, they sent people.
I would never have guessed that in a million years. Mm-hmm. I mean, you hear about the cat stuck in the tree, but a squirrel? Come on.
Well, we went out twice during my career for a lady with her hair on fire.
Is that a joke?
No. And it was real.
Her hair was on fire?
She had a hair product in her hair, and one of her friends was smoking, and that's how actually, I think that's how both of them happened. And next thing you know, her hair was burning,
Was it still actively burning when you guys got there?
Again, I didn't personally respond to that call. I was just happened to be working when it went out. But no, I don't believe so. I think they hit her with something heavy to put the fire out or something. I don't know.
That's a hardcore hair fire. If the fire department can leave the station and get there and your head's still on fire, that's intense.
Yeah. But I mean, we had all different types of calls. I mean, we had a plane crash right on our main street.
Oh, wow.
We had a plane crash in a river one time. We had
Even Rob was talking about, wasn't it the fire department when he was going to check gas leaks?
Yeah.
So one of the other guys that was part of 56+1, he was he works for C&G.
Okay, yeah.
And so yeah, gas leaks happen. He's like the firemen, they were just standing back, like he's walking in with a backpack to go address the issue or whatever. But if that goes kaboom,
Your gear ain't going to protect you. I mean, that's the difference there is that we have regulations we have to follow, operating procedures that we have to live by.
Right.
And if we try walking into a gas leak with no gear on, you're going to be talking to the chief the next morning.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether there's an active gas leak or not. You do it the way you're taught to do it, the way your SOPs say you do it, or, you get re-educated.
Yeah. Well, you're no good to anybody if you can't,
Right.
if you're hurt yourself, then
Right.
how are you going to help anybody else? And
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes sense. There's policies and procedures, and they're there for a reason.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, some of them are because somebody actually did it and
Yeah. I mean,
caused harm or injury. you know?
I mean, just that one fluke is all it takes for
Right.
the policy to change.
Yeah.
So actual fire calls.
Yeah.
What the scariest moment for you?
Well, probably the scariest fire call. I mean, there's a few that I've been in that are pretty hot, and you worry about the room flashing or stuff. But when I was a volunteer, we went for mutual aid to another town. So working fire turned out to be in the basement, and when we got there, I was assigned with search, and we were told that there was possibly 2 school-age children still in the house.
Wow.
So I went to go to the second floor, and I put my foot on the steps, and the only thing that kept me from going to the basement was that there was enough carpet left stapled on the sides
Oh man.
that let me stop. So I mean that could have been a wholly different incident there.
Right.
That's scary. That'll make your heart jump.
Yeah, it does. It catches you saying, what are you thinking? Kind of pay attention. And that's, I mean, you cannot predict everything, but you can plan for a lot of it if you just train properly.
Right.
And, use good protocol and
Right.
good instincts. So.
Any of the 9/11 stuff affect your fire department?
So we had some guys in the department that knew firefighters that died there. It obviously affected the whole community because so many firefighters died that day.
Yeah, I didn't know if any guys got dispatched out there from Connecticut.
So there were some that went from Connecticut. Actually, the volunteer department that I had previously belonged to had sent a crew down there. My brother was actually one of the guys who worked on the pile for a day, along with other guys from the town there. Our department had received an official request to stand by for people to go, and they had taken names of anybody who was willing to go spend time there. But that never. They had so many people that were just showing up. They really had a hard time with accountability.
Right.
Knowing who's there, what they're doing, where they are.
Right. It's more of a hindrance than help.
And so what really happened is they started to draw back, and our department never officially sent anybody down there. We might have had a few guys that went on their own, whether they were supposed to or not. But as a department, we didn't officially send anybody down there.
I have one more question about your firefighting career.
Sure.
Was there any point besides falling through the stairs that you didn't think you were going to walk out, or you didn't think you were going to make it home?
Not that I can think of right off the top of my head. I mean, there's been a couple scary incidents and stuff like that, but most of them, you just take as they come, and you just rely on your training and do what you got to do. I spent a lot of my career kind of more worried about the guy next to me than I did about me.
Yeah.
So when you're watching out for somebody else, you kind of inadvertently watch out for yourself at the same time because you're no good to them if you're not around either. So I think a lot of it was luck. Some of it was hopefully skill and experience, and I made it through the end. So
yeah, well, I'm glad you're here because we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I'm glad I'm here too.
One of the guys that I interact with over at the marina there, he's a firefighter, and he was talking about the expenses on these fire trucks. Like, I don't know any of the specifications on these things, but it was I think a town of Basra, and these things are over $1 million for a fire truck.
So yeah, when I first started, I think you could buy an average pumper for around $250,000.
Yeah.
And by the time I left, our pumpers were running about $950,000 or so. Our ladder truck was, I think, $1.5 million. So yeah, I mean, they were a process of redoing all of their apparatus, so they might have gotten a little bit of better deal because they were replacing like 3 pumpers and then one of the ladder trucks, and they
Wow.
replaced actually they replaced both ladder trucks, one first and then the second one, and then they got a new rescue truck before I left. So
Yes, I kind of wonder about when you see these things pull out of the firehouse, right? They're shiny, they're clean, they're maintained, at least from what I can tell.
which I mean, generally that's part of the job is you're going to keep stuff clean, usable,
Operational, right?
And well upkept, because I mean that's first of all, it's sitting in your house. The station I was in, the bay's in the middle of it. Your
You live there.
rooms are on one side, your kitchen and living room are on the other.
Right.
You walk by those trucks every single day. I mean, there's days that, they get dirty and you're not going to, throw it to the car wash that night. But I mean, most of the time the guys are pretty good about keeping the stuff upkept and clean and, doing their job.
It's all part of it. You want it to be in good working order. You got to maintain it. You've got preventative maintenance.
Yeah, I will tell you that as your apparatus gets older and the town doesn't really seem to care about it, it's a lot harder to do that yourself. I mean, for a while, in my earlier career, we had trucks that had rust showing, and the department's closed most of the time, and
right.
things like that. I mean, I think we went through. I think by the time I left, 4 iterations of apparatus had come through the firehouse that I left at least.
Oh wow.
Trucks.
Yeah.
4
different trucks. Yeah, to replace that pumper. So.
And that's over 26 years. So
yeah,
you're looking at 5-year average for a pumper truck.
So generally they buy them for a 10-year lifespan, and they try and get I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of them that stick around for 20 years, but after that 10-year mark, they try and move it into a reserve status.
Okay.
So when the truck goes down, they have a usable, decent apparatus to replace it with. So
what is failing on them for a 10-year life cycle? I mean, is it the frame? Is it the brakes?
It could be a little bit of everything. It'd just be, overuse. I mean, these guys they don't have a lot of, mileage, but they generally have a lot of hours, I mean, even still in a 5-year period, you could rack up 100,000 miles on them.
Wow.
Just traveling, 5-6 miles at a time.
That's a lot of calls.
Yeah, that's a lot of calls. I agree. So, I mean, I guess I just kind of wonder about Rich and I come out of the aviation world, and we got to keep planes flying, and these planes' life cycles have 30 and 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Their planes are working in some of the worst environments that.
But they get taken down and completely rebuilt. Where fire apparatuses, you can't do that.
So that's where I'm going. Why isn't that I mean, is cost a prohibitor there?
Well, and then I think somewhat it is. I mean, East Hartford has their own maintenance division that they have. They have 2 guys that are mechanics.
Oh, they're fleet maintenance guys.
Yeah, and they do their best to keep things up and running. But I mean, things happen. You get accidents, you get failures, you get whatever. You get just worn parts that have to be replaced. And at some point, things don't work as well as they used to. I mean, the fire department, when I was about the time I was getting ready to retire, was looking a lot more at the CRM aspect, the crew resource management mentality that the airlines use and stuff like that for a lot of the different parts of the service. But I don't know. I really can't tell you why they don't just rebuild
I'm just
them
curious. I didn't know if you knew.
It's got to be a cost effectiveness or beyond economical.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, to me, and I'm just thinking outside the box here, that if there was a business that solely lived on that, instead of spending $1 million and you could revamp an entire vehicle and charge them $500,000, you're saving 50% off that number.
There are a lot of trucks that get refurbished. No, don't get me wrong.
Okay, so they frame off, restore them type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But generally that only lasts for so long. I don't know why. Maybe, especially in Connecticut, you're dealing with rust and all these other things that they just can't fix.
Pretty harsh environment.
By the time you're replacing the frame, you're also, we had a lot of trucks that the frames ratted out on. They were taken off the road. They're like, you can't drive this no more.
Yeah, it's going to be.
And it didn't really look bad from the outside, but you crawl underneath, and the pieces of rust that would fall off and take your hand off. So
time to get a new truck.
Yeah.
So I know we want to talk about your book, but one more question about the fire department.
Yeah.
Softball teams, who's better, police or fire?
Usually depends on the year. So we didn't really have. I didn't play softball a lot during my career there. We started up again right before I left, and a bunch of old guys got hurt really quick, and so it lasted 1 year.
That was it.
And but we actually had a touch football game 1 year with the police department, and it didn't stay touch for very long. And the police did win that one, but it was interesting.
Well, hey, man, it was 3 against however many the police department had. That's what I'm going to go with.
No, they both had full teams. I mean, we actually had a guy on our team that was a semi-pro quarterback. So, I mean,
wow.
You know, we had good people on the team. It's just...
No, it's like Army, Navy. You just never know.
No, and you flip the coin and see who's going to win that year.
Well, that's awesome, dude. I appreciate all the information about the fire department.
No problem.
It's pretty intriguing. I never really sat down and talked to a firefighter like you, especially someone who's done it for a career. So a lot of good stuff. If anybody watching has any questions, type them in, and we'll get to that and ask Kevin as we see him come through. But you know, the next thing that I find very interesting about you is you're a published author.
Yeah. Yep.
And
2 books now.
You've got your 2 books, right? So we got what? Program to Win?
Yeah, and The Cost of Killing.
The Cost of Killing. So those are the 2 books you have out right now.
So far, yeah. Hopefully I'll have a new one out in another few months, but well, it'll be longer than that, probably 6 months at least. But
so you're working on the 3rd now.
I am working on 3rd, yeah.
Amazing. Talk to me about how do you go from firefighter to author?
You just start writing. Just let all that,
I stopped.
Let all that crazy stuff in your head fall out on the paper.
I wrote for days and days and days, and then I stopped.
I always dabbled a little bit in it. Almost my whole life, I've written little bits and pieces here and there.
Okay, so there's some history here. It's not like you just stop firefighting and then say, you know what, I'm
going to write a book.
going to write a book.
No, I've always, like I said, I dabbled in it a little bit, but I never finished a story. I would just write parts of them when I was... It was almost maybe a little cathartic for me, you know, during times at work when I had a few moments, I'd throw some out, or sometimes at home. But, yeah, and then as I got closer to retirement, I decided to put having a book on my bucket list. You know, my goal was really just for me. I just wanted to be able to put it on my bookshelf and say, hey, I did that.
How, you don't have to give me a number. How bad is it to go from writing to getting it basically scrubbed for legalese language, and then getting your art, and then getting your publishing, and then now getting it to the shelves?
So
the expense.
I describe writing as a 2-part career. So the first is artistic. You know, you sit down, you let all the crazy things fall onto the paper, and, you know, that's the fun part. You know, you get to engage with all those characters you've tried to keep hidden in your brain for a long time.
And then personalities.
And then you have to come to the business side of it, which involves the editing and the marketing and all this other stuff that goes along with publishing a book. And that's, you know, I think at times much more daunting than the actual writing of a story. I was lucky enough that, you know, like I said, my first goal wasn't to mass market a book. It was just to write a book for me. And I had a few people that were reading it as I was writing it, and their encouragement is what kind of propelled me into saying, well, let's see what I can do with this. And then I just happened to, we were talking about Nick, the Greek freak there. He introduced me to a friend of his, Kristen Haddad, who is an artist. And I said, hey, would you be interested in making a book cover for me? And she thought that was a great idea, so we got together. And the cover on Program to Win, she designed for me. I mean, she did that whole thing. And, you know, then I had this cover for a book, and people were like, oh, that's awesome. You have to get that published. Right. And I'm like, all right, yeah, great. I wish it was just that easy. I'll push my publish button, you know. And I had a friend, an acquaintance I had known on the internet, and his name was Kyle Race. And he is involved in publishing and marketing and things like that. And I called him up one day, and I said, hey, listen, you know anybody, you know, that I could maybe get a leg in to get a book published? And he goes, oh, yeah. There's this company I deal with, it's called Tactical 16. He goes, they actually work specifically with fire, police, and military. He goes, you should give them a call. So he gave me their number, and I gave the guy there a call. And he's like, well, it sounds interesting. Here's how we handle all our process, you know. And it wasn't just, oh, you're a friend, you can come and be an author for us. It was, no, you got to submit, and you got to do all these things, and we'll see if we like it. And if we do, we'll send you a contract. And so, you know, I jumped through all their hoops and did all their things, right? And
so they're basically screening it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good.
And so I'm waiting. Fair. It's, you know, it's a process, and I'm waiting. I'm like, when are they going to let me know? When are they going to let me? And then finally one day I got the email that says, congratulations, we'd like to offer you a contract to publish a book. And, it just took off from there. And then when I told them I had a second book, they were ecstatic. So, like the biggest cost and, from a small publisher point is just the marketing costs, to get things out there. They do some for me, but I try and do a lot for myself. So it's just the slow process of making people,
that's what
who
anything
K.A. Brown is, so.
Yeah, that's anything with business. I mean, we've heard the phrase lightning in a bottle, and the bottom line is there's no such thing as lightning in a bottle.
No, there's just a lots of money or no money. That's really all it boils down
That's
to.
exactly it.
You got to have patience.
Yeah, I mean, so my publisher told me, he goes, listen, he goes, you're going to write a series of book. He goes, when you get to the book 5, he goes, you'll find that marketing is so much easier and you'll start to have name recognition.
Right.
He goes, and suddenly it's going to be like the sky opens up for you. He goes, but generally for that genre that you're writing in, it's going to take a little while. You do your best. I think I'm above the average. I did a lot of reading before I started to think about publishing, and there are like almost 1,700 new authors offered every day due to Amazon and the companies like that.
Oh, wow.
Every single day. And the average of them sell about 60 copies of their book, or less. And so, I'm doing much better than that. So I'm happy with my progress. It's still slow, I don't know if I'll ever be, the next Stephen King or, one of those guys, but I'm having fun doing it. So
I'm going to share something with you that I've learned in business. And so I read, but I'm very technical oriented.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also very history oriented. I could read the George Washington book. Fiction for me is a little more challenging to get my head wrapped around, and even when it comes to movies, I just could leave it, right? But one of the most, and I've had a few different businesses. One of the most, what I would say was insightful things from one of my mentors was, are you familiar with Loctite?
Yep.
It's a glue that's commonly used in the
Right.
defense contracting world.
Mm-hmm.
They sell it in little bottles. What if you took, and this, obviously there's people that love reading novels. My hairstylist or
Right.
the girl that cuts my hair, the books I see her read, I'm like, there's no way I would sit and read that. It's just, and it's all fairy tale, whatever. She loves it. Okay. And people that read a lot, there's a high level of intelligence with these people. They're learning a lot of language arts. They're learning a lot of different words. For me, on that, I could sit down and read a technical publication on an airplane,
Right.
which is probably twice that, and I would probably get more. I don't want to say enjoyment out of it. Not an offense to your book. I'm just saying that's me, right?
Everybody's different. Yeah.
So to the point of everybody's different. Have you given consideration to selling like a weekly, hey, this is the K.A. Brown series?
Not yet. I mean, so my son reads a lot like that. My son reads these stories that people write online,
Right.
and just keep going.
Right. So you're keeping almost like a trilogy or something of that nature.
Well, with theirs, it's just an ongoing story. They write on it. They add, so many chapters every week,
right.
and they just keep moving. But I haven't ever really thought about that yet.
I'm just saying pieces, and people, they digest. You don't eat your food. It's the elephant theory at the same time.
Yeah. Take small bites, kind of thing. Yeah.
And so it may be intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
Like I flipped through it, and the first thing that I did was I said, "How many pages is this thing?" It's 800 pages.
The first one's shorter.
Right, but yeah, and so
and it's not 800. Don't get.
No, what was it? Five, whatever it was.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. But I guess that I'm just trying to help with the business. You said marketing, right?
Yeah.
NOS or Loctite Markets.
Right.
They sell little bottles of this stuff and you're always going back and buying more of that bottle.
Well,
and so even in the military, we'd run out and damn, we're out. You go back to the shop. We didn't think about it in the military because we weren't paying for it. However,
right.
Loctite, when you go through any specification in the military, they reference Loctite or equivalent. So what does the military buy? Loctite.
Yeah.
And Loctite literally has a genius business model, not in the sense that the glue is great. I think it's subpar in many instances. I think they have some other products that are pretty good, but it's the little pieces is where their genius is.
Right.
And so that's all. I'm just sharing that as something to
Something
take
to think about,
into perspective there. That's all.
So we got a comment from Rihanna. She says she's loving the book, The Cost of Killing.
Yeah, and right. So
here's someone that's not afraid to pick up a 300, 500 page book and just.
Well, The Cost of Killing is actually a shorter book. The Cost of Killing is great, but the Program to Win is a shorter book. But yeah, it's I've had great reviews on both books actually.
I need to sit down and read them.
I would hope so. Yeah.
I will.
So I mean, now that you have it, start with Program to Win. I mean, that's the one
Right.
to really start with. It's a little shorter, so you get into the characters faster.
I got to interrupt him here. He just signed up. He did this with overextending himself, right? So we're reading every week when we do our podcast on the books and the stuff that we read.
I didn't say I was going to read it today.
So
that's why I haven't read the book to begin with.
No, here's what I tell people. 'Cause a lot of people are like,
Right.
I would read, but I don't have the time.
Right.
And I had a friend of mine who was really into audiobooks because he said he was busy all the time. And he just didn't have time to read a real book.
And some people
unfortunately, mine's aren't. I haven't gotten them in audiobooks yet. Take 15 minutes every morning with your cup of coffee and read a book that you enjoy. I would prefer it be mine, but I mean, it could be any book, really.
Right.
And read it for enjoyment. And what my friend told me is that he started doing that with my book because there was when he had the time to read it. And he goes, and he fell in love with the whole point of reading.
Right.
You know, and it just made his day start so much better because it was only 15 minutes. And he said, sometimes I hated to put the book down. I wanted to read more.
Right.
He goes, but then I got to look forward to it until the next time I could sit down and read it. And, reading is a true form of enjoyment. You know, a lot of people say, well, I'm not that great at reading or this, but you don't have to sit down and read a whole book in one setting. You can take weeks to do it. You know,
I'm in 2 books right now: the Lyman Reloading Manual.
There you go. Yeah.
And Word Power Made Easy. I don't know if you're familiar with that book. But anyways, it's something to help my vocabulary building. So, like you said, though, you set 15 minutes aside or 20 minutes, but make it a consistent schedule. Listen, I'm sure your book is great based on the comments that I've heard. I'm not disputing that.
I mean, who'd know better than the author, right? It's a great book.
Mark had a comment on Facebook. He said Stephen King released his book The Green Mile that way. He said the issue was that once it was released, sales took off because people didn't want to wait.
Oh, wow.
For the weekly episode.
See what I mean?
That's interesting, yeah.
There's a perspective. So now you're playing on 2 sides of a market mentality.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm saying, just to expose some sort of it's theories, if you will.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And certain psychologies of business that make some differences.
I've always been afraid of the psychology people, so.
Oh, me too.
So
anytime someone tells me, I'm like, I'm out of here.
There was a book that I read that was actually involved about that. It was by a guy named Jeffrey Gitmer, and he wrote this column in a North Carolina paper every week, and it was about selling. Mm-hmm. And he publishes this book called The Sales Bible. Mm-hmm. Well, I was standing in CVS one time buying something in a pharmaceutical line, and I seen this book. For me, it was more so that the word Bible stood out. That's another book that I'm in. So, anyways, so I'm like,
better than mine.
I'm in sales.
I can't compete with that one.
I'm in sales, so I'm like, and it just caught me.
Mm-hmm.
But the psychology of selling, that guy was fantastic. And there's things in there that I think would, and we'll talk about them afterwards, but I think will help in this as well. It was impressive. I literally said I was struggling with one particular client trying to get them to buy from me, and it was a battle, and I had one shot, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to rely on this book. The book, I bought it, and it sat on my nightstand, and I didn't read it. And finally that night I picked it up, I flip it open, and I read this whole thing or whatever. And I did exactly as the book said. I'll be damned if I didn't walk away with that sale that day.
Well, there you go.
Holy shit! Now I pick up the book and now I'm reading for more. But there is a significant thing with the psychology.
Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah, I do agree with that.
No, yeah.
I just don't want to look in here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and yours? Yeah. Like I said, I'm in the Lyman Reloading Manual.
Yeah.
So it's.
So let's talk about. My wife wanted me to ask you, what goes on in your head to write a book like this? She said
that's what he just said. He didn't want to talk about.
You have to.
So, just ideas come to me. I mean, even just from a title, some days I toss around titles and I'm like, ooh, that would make I could make a book out of that,
So for people who don't know what your books are based off of, can you just give us a quick overview? I know it's the character Derek Driver.
Yeah. So the very first book starts off. It's kind of a government conspiracy book. I call it a political thriller on the cover. It has less to do with actual politics and more to do with like behind the scenes bad stuff that goes on in the world. So the first book just starts off with a scientist who's looking for a genetic way to cure cancer. And he accidentally finds a genetic key that determines if a person's going to be liberal or conservative. And so his work kind of gets taken away from him by a billionaire and a corrupt politician that try and use it to control an election. They want to see if they can change the way people think.
Interesting.
This is pretty deep already.
Right.
And,
That's what I mean. Right off the bat, it's interesting.
Yeah, in their testing process, they kill a bunch of people, and that's what brings my character, Derek Driver, into the scene. He's a Boston detective who comes across the first murder, and at first it looks very, almost like a natural occurrence, but just little bits of evidence arrive that gets him interested. And then things happen that, I don't want to go into too much detail,
Sure.
but things happen that draw him farther into the story. And it just takes off from there. So, I mean, it
But
really is.
okay, so why not go into detail? It's kind of like the showing.
Well,
of
I kind of
Top
want to give
Gun.
away all the books.
Right.
I don't want to be one of them trailers that tells you all the best parts, and then you get the thing and you're like,
Just
"Duh."
tell us the ending.
But yeah, it's it's just ends up being the chase to try and narrow things down, and there's a lot of side twists and different things that happen during the plot that I mean, there's actually like a plot, and then there's like a bunch of subplots that all occur in my book when it's going on.
So you almost have to be, instead of an artist with a piece of canvas and painting, you're the artist with a book. I mean, are you like imagining things in your mind?
So yeah, I mean, so I literally a lot of the scenes that I write, I see in my head. I can see what's going on. I become the character.
Now you're scaring me.
Well, it just happens. But and that's how I can write so that other people see it when they read it. Then they read it and they're like, oh, I can see what's going on here. I know I understand what this character's doing. I do fall back a little bit on my fire department career for writing in that, I can use a certain amount of empathy from how people have reacted to different scenarios so that my character's reactions in different scenarios are authentic.
Right.
They're how people would react in those different scenarios, depending on the type of person. So that's one of the things I try and weave into my writing to try and make it a little more realistic for people. I don't dive a lot of times into the very technical parts of stuff to find out if it's real or how it actually really works. I just give people enough so they can imagine that it did happen, and that it would work. It's a fiction book after all. I mean, you have to take a little leap of faith.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So I know that Deborah Hockman is not my wife.
No.
She's not your wife. I'm assuming it's your wife.
No.
What?
It's my sister.
We were talking
Hopefully
about
nice.
my wife.
Okay, she writes, I wondered the same thing as your wife, LOL.
She's responding to me.
Program. Oh, wait a minute.
I was saying my wife was reading the book.
I'm like, who
So
is
yeah,
this?
she said she was wondering the same thing. What goes on in your head?
Oh, yeah, she should know better.
She said
She still really want to know the answers to that question.
She says Program to Win is so fast moving and had so many parts and pieces. It was so fascinating and mind boggling.
So she did, after she read my book, she's like, where did this come from? She's like, how do you do this? So I think a lot of people didn't know I really had this in me. I kind of never really advertised it to anyone. It wasn't like something that I said, oh, I can write stories. I did it for me. And like I said, the first book was going to be just kind of my bucket list thing for retiring. I'm going to publish a book. I'm going to put it on my shelf, and that'll be the end of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. Or fortunately, it didn't happen that way. And I think I have more stories to tell, and I hope people will enjoy them as I put them out. So
that's great. Like I said, Rihanna, she loves your book. I know she's gonna jump on the first part of it and read that probably sooner than I do. Like Eric said, I did overextend myself. Like I'm not going to read your book until I'm done with our founding fathers book, because that's just been
that's kind of the whole reason you've been here. So
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so
that's just Richard. By the way, that's Richard's nature. Like, he wants to be involved with everything. I'm just kind of like, he did this a couple of times. Like, all right, and he's like, you in? I'm like, dude, I can't.
Well, I got tied up with Nick running the Manchester Road Race.
Oh, well, that's important too.
I'm like, oh man, I didn't really want to do that, but I opened my big mouth.
Well,
put my foot in it.
Honestly,
He did too.
The good part about Nick is that he doesn't really run the road race.
No, we actually had a backpack full of beers, and we walked, and we had the greatest time. I was actually glad that we did it, but
I mean, you're not gonna see me running unless someone's chasing me. So I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
And even then, I'm at the point now. It's like, dude, you're gonna get what you get when you get me. So.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think I've ran since maybe first or second grade.
So Marty asked a question here. Do you write daily? If so, do you sit down and plan to write for a certain amount of time?
I do not write daily. I tend to write in spurts. So
As it comes to you.
So I write really well usually when I go down to Florida. I try and go down to Florida a couple times a year. We have a timeshare down there, and we just go down and I try and write my stories. The first two books, the second book specifically, was written quite a bit while I was in Florida. I've just been kind of in a lull because my storyline in my head has been jumping around, so I really haven't gotten
You got to lay it out.
squared away on the third book. I started on it and I got a good ways done, and I'm like, I don't like it. So
Really? So
yeah.
you get.
And so then I just kind of got to find the time for me because I don't really always have a good place to write. I don't have, like a set office where I go sit and write or anything right now. And the weather hasn't really been conducive for me to sit outside where I like to be a lot of times when I'm writing. But once I get going, then I just try and, when I'm in that mood, I try and put away like an hour a day minimum to just write stuff down and go through the storyline. And because I'm getting old, some days I have to read what I wrote already to figure out where I'm going. But generally, I when I get in that mood, I try and cut time aside for writing, anywhere from an hour to 4 maybe, before I let myself try and get up and do other things. I like to be outside because, then I can have a cigar, I can have a drink, I can, and the wife won't, yell at me for being too close to the house. So. But,
now, you said you formally, like, there's no real training, so to speak, in writing. So
well,
you
for,
said you do
for
it
me,
the way
there's no
you
training. There are a lot of people who go to school and take English classes.
No,
to be good
right.
writers, yeah.
So now that was what was leading into my question was.
As a matter of fact, I hated English.
Right.
That's kind of ironic for an author.
I
And
hated
so
it.
who cleans that up for you? Does anybody, or does your editors?
I do all my first round editing myself. I go back through the book and I look, and I use the programs that are available online. I Word actually, you can use Word to clean stuff up, and then I have a couple other editing programs that I've purchased for that purpose. I actually use a program now that compares my writing to other authors. So if I could say if I'm putting something out that is going to be tenable, or if I'm just writing crap. But yeah, I try and get it cleaned up. Now, my publisher does go through it when I send it to them. They scan it and make sure that, if they find anything that's really egregious, they'll send it back to me and say, fix this. But by the time I've sent them both books, I haven't gotten either one back saying this is terrible. Wow. Now, probably both books, when people read them, my wife is very meticulous about, she won't read my book until it's published because she doesn't want to be the spelling police or anything like that.
Right.
So occasionally, I think in both books, there's a couple little things where there's an error here or there.
Okay.
Most people don't ever notice them, but my more attentive readers will sometimes send me an email saying, hey, did you know that on page blah, 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 there's this?
And
just say it's fiction. I can do whatever I want.
But I said pretend it's something different. That's what you had to do to read the book.
Exactly.
So the reason why
I'm finding now that that's actually common, that professional editors are not taking everything out of books.
Right.
They're even still making mistakes because a lot of them rely on software, and software says, that word is a proper word, even though it's not the right there you're supposed to use there,
It's spelled correctly. It's just not the right context.
And I have a problem personally when I'm writing. A lot of times if I'm trying to put the word from, for whatever reason, I write form.
Form, yeah.
Almost every single time.
And spell check doesn't catch it.
No, and so my third phase is, so I write the book, then I come back and I do a self-edit with like Word or something like that, and then I audio play the book back to myself. Mm-hmm. So I listen to how everything sounds as it's being read. And that's what really my final thing is because that helps you pick up almost everything.
That's exactly. Well, I write like I talk. Mm-hmm. So I'm going back to this question for. So I did a fundraising stint for it was the oldest veteran nonprofit in the country, called the Soldiers, Sailors, Marines, and Airmen Club, and we set out on this venture to raise a pretty large amount of money to revamp this hotel where veterans could stay in Manhattan for $35 a night. And I was kind of voluntold that I would be in this fundraising or campaign manager type of position for the effort. So I read up this through the guidance of an actual professional fundraiser and good friend of mine. He's like, all right, this is what we need to do. You need to get this, this, and this. So I write this campaign statement. Mm-hmm. I was proud of it. I worked very hard on it. And one of the members of the team, his name was John Delvecchio, and John Delvecchio is a author from the Vietnam era. He served in Vietnam. He's another veteran, and he started changing it. And he's like, "Well, this is grammatically incorrect." And I'd read it as I would talk. I'm like, "Well, I don't see it." And then I'm like, "All right, whatever, John. Just change whatever." And before you know it, he was changing everything. And I'm like, "All right,
yeah,
dude, whatever. This is what you do. That's not what I do." But I was just kind of like, I felt almost deflated in some sense because I felt like I failed, I guess, and that I read it and I'm reading it as I talk. But then he started correcting me on things, and there was obviously things in there that made sense to me in the correction format. I was just wondering, from your perspective, have you run into that?
No, actually, one of the big things that I got at first was that I don't write like other writers.
Okay.
And I basically just said, I don't care. This is how I write. So a lot of people describe my writing when you're reading my books is like actually watching like a TV show or a movie in the way that my writing breaks the scenes out. I know we mentioned that earlier when we were talking. But a lot of people appreciate that. They're like, it makes it so much, because, I mean, let's face it, most people now would rather watch a movie or watch a TV show than actually pick up a book. But so I kind of think that it's almost in my favor that having a book that reads like watching a TV show or watching a movie is something new for people. You know, I mean, I'm sure there are other authors who write the same way that I do. I'm just not familiar with many of them. I've had people compare me to other authors. And some, I think it's in the genre versus the style.
Okay.
Like I've had a couple, I mean, this is going to sound really self-aggrandizing, but I've had more than a couple people tell me that I write like Tom Clancy.
Wow, that's quite the compliment.
It is. I mean, I can think of much better, except I tell him that's not even possible because I do like 15 minutes of research and he does like 10 years of research before he writes a book.
So do you read Tom Clancy novels?
Yes, I've read Tom Clancy novels.
Okay, so that maybe there's something about that.
Well, Tom I mean, you spoke to technical writing, and he is a more technical writer to the point of, I don't know if you ever know this, but he was actually hauled in by the NSA or the, one of them, government security, FBI types. Yeah. Because they thought he was sharing military secrets in his book because he knew so much about submarines. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no, he goes, I researched all of this. He goes, it's all publicly available. I'll show you where.
Right.
He spent 3 days, I think it was 3 days in the custody of the government trying to prove he wasn't a spy or that he didn't have espionage, in his background to get this information. And that's how in-depth he does and stuff. Me, I just kind of wing it off the top of my head and make it up. So
that's working. That's where flux capacitor came from.
Right. And I have a friend who's like, dude, he goes, this stuff is so close to reality. He goes, there's going to be some men in black suits knocking on your doors one of these days.
Oh, man.
And so, I mean, a lot of the stuff that's in my book does mirror current political climate, especially in book one. I mean, book one was already written, but we had just come through COVID, and people are like, oh, is this about COVID?
Oh, man.
And I'm like, no, not really. But, I mean, there are some similarities maybe, but, because it was an intended virus that was going to attack the population and control how they vote. And honestly, I think, not that COVID was released to do that, but COVID definitely had a certain amount of that effect on our population.
100%.
And so, yeah, people are like, oh, where'd you get this information? How'd you know this was coming? And, I just have a crazy imagination. I don't tell you,
Well, that's where, you go, let's go back to Star Wars when we were kids.
Right,
Somebody had to imagine this. And I look at things today.
I think it was Gene Roddenberry, but.
Well, I don't know any Roddenberry, but okay.
No, I mean, originally imagined that Star Trek was like the, But
so,
I mean, even before
they're drafting these things in their minds. Now, I'll fast forward to, I was literally eating a bowl of cereal watching one of the Transformer movies. Mm-hmm. And they made a statement on a program that, unless you had a top secret security clearance, you would have never known about this. Mm-hmm. And they said, release the blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I literally stopped crunching what I was crunching. I was like, rewind that, and then rewound it, and I'm like, how the hell do they know about this?
Right.
Right. So, I mean, obviously there's either leaks. The guy couldn't have imagined this because the system that he was talking about was actually an acronym for what it actually meant, but it was depicted and reflected into actually what was actually designing. We were designing to. So I just wonder that about writing, like a lot of times, and to Star Wars, people have to imagine that. But in your instance, you're talking about a pandemic scenario. So, yeah, obviously.
I mean, it was, so the funny part is that I don't have any form of DOD in my background. So I don't have to go through that process that a lot of the guys who are in the military and decide they want to write fiction have to go through. So I don't know if you ever heard, there's an author named Jack Carr. He's a retired SEAL. And Jack Carr wrote his first book called The Terminalist. And I read it, and then I watched his bio, and I'm like, the hell, if this guy can write a book, I can write a book. So that was one of the other keys that kind of propelled me into the whole I can do this category.
Right.
And it was funny because this first book that he put out, he actually published it with the redactions that the DOD put in the book. So there was parts of the book that were literally blacked out.
Oh, man.
In his fiction book, because they thought it was too close to reality.
Wow.
And so he says, hell with it. I'll just
put it in there anyway.
Put it in there, and people were reading it like, I wonder what's behind all those black marks,
Right, and that's actually good, though.
Yeah, now they can use their imagination.
Yeah, right. You think about the psychology of it.
No, obviously he had some inside track, and there's probably things he wrote about that were, the
Close.
names and places were changed to protect the innocent or guilty or whoever, but...
your mind is your mind.
Yeah, I don't have to deal with that. I can just write whatever the hell I want, and if I think it's real, I can put it down anyhow. I mean, that doesn't stop the guys from coming and knocking on my door. But
no, it doesn't. But hey, I mean, it's your story.
Yeah, and I mean, I try and I want my fiction to be believable, but also entertaining. And if people go, that's even better.
Right.
I wonder what he's going to write in the next book.
So, well, no, that is the key to your, I guess, the secret sauce of making people come back for more.
Keep them wanting more.
That's
exactly
it.
Back
to
and I do. Right, so both of my books have little trailers, kind of at the end. I kind of use like the Marvel theory. Finish a story, but give them
a taste
of what could be coming next.
Nice.
And both books have that at the end of them. Sometimes it is hard to figure out how to make that work with the next book when, you're like, oh, I had an idea while I wrote this book, but it's changed now, and now I got to take that little drop at the end and figure out how to make it fit in the next book.
Connect it, yeah.
So it's a challenge, and it's fun, and it's once I get in that zone though, I mean it's a lot of fun.
So you say Florida.
Yeah.
Based on things that just, and I'm not a writer, but you watch enough movies and you see enough articles. They always say places like Maine are where a lot of writers go to. Is it a relaxing thing for you? Is it
to a certain extent? So it's kind of funny. Like
happy?
I said, we have a timeshare down there. So my wife has a job that she can work remotely. Mm-hmm. So she comes down there and she's working during the day anyhow. So for me to just sit down and write makes sense because, I mean, I'm not going to go off gallivanting trying to go to Disney World or something without her. I mean, that just wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
So that's when I take my time to...
I don't know about that. I'd go to Disney World by myself.
I mean, I might, but I mean, she'd probably say go to Disney World by myself.
Yeah,
but,
beers around the world. I'll catch you there.
Yeah, that's the one she'd be like, no, you take me. I just use that time to sit down. The place we get has a little veranda outside. I just go sit on that.
So that's interesting. It's a good question. But so you look at the environment conducive to writing or whatever. But when you have, I'll just call it the proverbial writer's block. Do you talk to that about your wife? Or you mentioned you have a couple kids. Do you ever call your children and ask them about,
I just sit in a dark room and talk to the characters and see. No, just kidding.
Just kind of bang your head against the wall and drool until you figure it out.
I just stare in the mirror and go, what do you think? I wouldn't say that I've ever truly had writer's block because I haven't come up to a point where I just don't know what to write.
Well, I think it's art for you based on what I'm understanding.
Yeah. My bigger issue is what I want to write going to work? And sometimes I let that kind of just hold me back a little bit. I'm like, geez, I just don't know if this is going to go where I want it to go. and I have that struggle of trying to make sure that the scene that I'm writing propels the story forward, and makes it go to the next part.
So you're trying to foresee what's
kinda,
down the road.
So to write a book, so honestly, here's the weird part. When I wrote the first book, I did no outline. I did no foreplanning. I sat down and I just started writing and let what was happening guide me where I was going.
Wow.
And that's why I had such a shotgun effect to it. I mean, that first book, it just takes off and goes in a million different directions. But they're followable because, like I said, I kind of write them in little scenes. So it's not like you get lost in what's happening now. Everything kind of makes sense and from a different viewpoint of where the story's going. So you might be seeing stuff from, the protagonist or the bad guy or whoever at each different side, or maybe ancillary people that aren't really 100% invested in the story, but they're enough outside that they add to the story as it's going forward. And so it just moves the story forward as you're going. And that first book, like I said, I sat down and I just, I need to do this. And I need to do that. And the second book, I had a pretty clear idea of where I was going to go. And then I'm writing a scene and I'm like, this scene is great, but I had no idea this was going to happen, And so I just wrote the scene. I just let it roll. I just let it play out of my head and just kept typing,
That is
and
awesome.
then it's all done. I'm like, how do I make this work back in the story though? This changes everything. And and all of a sudden I knew. I mean, I just kept writing the scene as it kept playing out with the different characters, and all of a sudden it just fell back into place. And I'm like, that's freaking awesome. So I just let that happen. And there's a lot of scenes that I'm writing that just kind of happen that way, almost organically, that they just kind of, the players in my mind kind of say, this is what we're doing. I just let it happen. So
it really is truly an art for you.
or a mental illness. I don't know which. But,
no, I think it has to be. I mean, like you said, I don't know where we're going with this.
Yeah. I mean, I try and, my goal obviously every time is to make the next book better than the last book. And I think I kind of set the bar a little high for myself with the first book. I didn't expect the kind of response that people gave me for that book. Everybody's like this. I had one girl read it in a day.
She really? They read this book in a day?
Yeah. No, the second one, the orange one. Program to Win.
Oh,
first
okay.
one.
She read Program to Win in a day, and she says, this is one of my best books I've ever written. She goes, it might be my favorite of all time.
Really?
And I'm like, holy cow.
That's pretty flattering.
Did you read the right book?
Is it the K. Brown one?
Look, I mean, if that's the case, why don't we get her on a podcast to talk about it? I mean, because
that'd be a road trip to Florida, so that'd be awesome. Let's go.
Cool too.
I don't look. Your customers are your best advocacy.
Right.
Right, and particularly in a genre of this, not the genre of the books, but just in reading and books themselves. So, has she read Cost of Killing?
She may have read it by now. When I was down there last, I talked to her, and she was saving it for a special day, for a spa day she was going to. So
I'll have my wife read a review for you.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
she's almost done.
I invite everybody who reads it to, leave an honest review. I mean, I had a couple, I had one 2-star review on that book, or maybe a 3-star review. The first book, Program to Win, where a lady read, her response was too partisan.
Oh, okay.
Politics.
I'm like, it's a political thriller. I mean,
right.
There's got to be a good guy and a bad guy, and since most books are written to one side, I wrote to the other. It's no big deal. And then I had one person on that book as well that left me a 3-star review with no comment. And those are the two worst reviews. I haven't had any 1-star reviews.
Where can people find your book, Kevin?
Both books are available on Amazon. They're on Barnes & Noble. They can go to my website, which is kabrowauthor.com, and they can see it there. It's also available through my publisher, which is Tactical 16 Publishing. And I do want to give them a shout out. They are the ones who kind of just paved this road for me. They specialize in fire, police, and military. They tell a lot of stories for military guys. A lot of nonfiction books they write for military guys that are.
I'd like to get those guys involved just to understand what goes on behind the idea of publishing. What qualifies a guy like Kevin to say, all right, we're going to take your book? Obviously, he's gotten great reviews.
He's got the story.
But
just a good bullshitter, that's all.
I want to go back to the star review. Now, there was actually a it was a doctor. I don't know. It was a Facebook thing that I seen. It was a doctor. He's like, I don't know what I got to do to earn the 5th star. And the comment was, Doctor So and So saved my life, and she rated him as 4 stars. So I wouldn't take the 2 stars or the 3 stars as any.
Honestly, I would say, probably 90+% more than that are all 5-star reviews from people.
Well, he couldn't get 5th stars, and he saved her life.
Well, he's got to entertain him at the same time. If he told a joke, maybe before surgery, he got that 5th star.
So I know when you came here, you got us these nice shirts, one for me and one for Eric. So I want to show the people that are watching, put this up on our video.
Oh, yeah.
But if someone wanted this shirt, could they reach out to you and send you a private message and
they can definitely
get one?
do that, yeah. So actually, believe it or not, these shirts are... I had them printed through Amazon, so all I got to do is send you a private link, and you don't even have to send me money. You can buy it right off of Amazon and have it shipped to your house. So if anybody really likes it, that's how you do it. That's kind of my new company logo, and I want to thank Kristen Haddad again for that. She's the one who designed that for me. I actually have a plaque at home that she drew up for me that's painted that way, so it's pretty awesome.
That's awesome. Well, listen, Kevin, I appreciate your time. You have any final words for us? Any
first of all,
words of advice?
I want to say thank you for bringing me and having me on the show. It's been great. I love the concept of what you guys do on your regular podcast, the 56+1. I think it's a great way to get information out to everyone about the intent of our founding fathers when they wrote the Constitution, what it really means for everyday people every day, and take a listen. I mean, it's information and education is probably the most powerful thing you can have. And too many people these days are relying on memes and someone else's opinion on Facebook to get ideas. And it's good to go back to the root source and find out what the intent for our country really was.
Right. And who were they? Right?
And honestly, when you do, you'll find out that their intent was timeless. It's not controlled by the changes of society over decades. It was timeless information for a free society. It didn't matter who's in it. It's how you maintain your free society. So
that's exactly why we're doing it.
And so I want to thank you guys for that.
Well, thank you very much. I know we appreciate that. It's this was an idea spawned by Eric mostly. We're just a couple guys sitting around a dartboard. Rihanna.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Oh, you better thank the wife.
Thank you, Rihanna. We need to thank all of our wives because we wouldn't be the men we are today without them.
That's definitely true. My wife keeps me in line, that's for sure.
It's a beautiful thing. But, because of 56+1, that's what brought us to you. And, I want to thank Nick Levrez for... and he says it in Greek so much better. It's Alivras.
Yeah.
But I can't say that every time I talk about him. But the Greek freak has put us in touch with each other. And
I think at this point, if you say Greek freak, pretty much everybody knows what you're talking about. So.
But no, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming out. And it was an awesome interview. And hope you guys at home enjoyed it. If you have any questions for us, feel free to put a comment.
Get them out now, because otherwise we're going to get off the air.
We'll actually probably leave the live running for a little bit. I'll just stop the audio recording. But
I think this one we can do some snippets from put on TikTok too about just the book itself.
Yeah, 100%.
And parse those comments out.
And if you're looking for a good read, again, Amazon. Check it out.
We'll put the links up on our Facebook page. And,
buy copies for your friends. I'm trying to get to 1,000 sales. So come on.
Awesome.
We'll help you out as much as we can. I got 3 people that are in my mind that I know that read, avid readers, and they like this type of stuff. Matter of fact, one of them asked me, it's like, Eric, you got any good books to read? I'm like, yeah, the Lineman Reloading Manual.
Right.
So, anyways.
Well, as always.
I guess the final thing I want to say is to everybody who has bought my book already, I just want to say thank you to you for helping support me and keeping me going, and look forward to the 3rd one. It should be out in a while.
That's what it's all about, helping everyday Americans. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Rich, and I'm a +1.
And I'm Eric. I'm a +1.
And I'm Kevin, and I'm a +1.
Thanks for listening. And we're still live on Facebook, by the way. But
okay.
The audio is... Dude, nice job, man.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Thank you.
I got to...
I hope we made it easy.
I'm going to take a quick 2-minute break because I need to get rid of some beer.
I need to
But we'll leave the Facebook Live running for a little bit, and then we'll come back and chit-chat if people still have questions.
I'll be right back as well.
All right. I'll be right here.
You going upstairs? Yeah, I'll go upstairs. I'm going outside.
Got any questions rolling in on the Facebook Live?
No, the last one was the last one.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like people are dropping off. I'm just going to cut the camera.